Welcome to the debate. Today we're looking at something that feels a little bit like magic, but is actually just mechanics. We are dissecting what we are calling the intuitive lexicon.
Mm,
These are the English phrases that learners seem to just absorb, from movies, from podcasts like this one, and casual conversations, rather than from a textbook. We're drawing on the philosophy of fluent mindcast, which suggests that there's a sort of comforting recognition in language learning that can bypass formal study.
it's a fascinating premise. We're talking about the vocabulary of the in-between, phrases that they don't necessarily carry hard data, but they carry the entire weight of a social interaction.
Exactly.
The you know what I means, the fair enoughs, it's like the glue that holds the bricks of a conversation together.
Right. And the central question we're wrestling with today is this. Do these phrases represent a mysterious, almost emotional connection to the language, this comforting recognition that proves the brain learns by feeling? Or are they simply functional tools? Just logic gates and conversational grease designed to minimize effort.
Well, you know where I stand. I'd argue that while the acquisition of these phrases might be intuitive, you just pick them up by listening because they're so repetitive, their function is entirely strategic. They are tools for managing imprecision, for navigating social situations. They aren't poetic. They are deeply pragmatic.
And I am taking the stance that they are the very heartbeat of human connection. When a learner instinctively uses a phrase like, that makes sense, they aren't performing a calculation. They're accessing a deep cognitive empathy. They are proving that language is less about rules and more about resonance. They're signaling safety.
Safety is just another word for risk management. But let's see if your vibes theory holds up to a little scrutiny.
So I want to start with my core position. The material from Fluent Mindcast highlights a really profound reality, which is that true learning doesn't always look like studying. It looks like listening, feeling, and recognizing patterns. The argument is that we crave this comforting recognition. We learn these phrases not because we study the grammar, but because we feel the emotional utility they provide. Let's take the phrase, it depends.
The classic non-answer. A consultant's favorite phrase, right?
But it's the ultimate answer. Think about the learner. They're often trapped in this binary world of yes and no, because that's what beginner textbooks teach you. Is the cat on the mat? Yes, no. But reality is, it's gray. When a learner grasps it depends, they aren't analyzing conditional clauses, they're sensing a cultural truth that context matters. It's a feeling of liberation. It signals to the other person, I am sophisticated enough to refuse a simple answer. It connects them to a mindset of flexibility.
I see the liberation aspect, I do. But I think you're skipping over the mechanics of it. It depends isn't just a vibe of flexibility, it's a logic gate. It's a functional operator. In computer science, we would call this a dependency declaration.
You are really determined to turn conversation into code today.
Because at a structural level, it is code. When a learner hears it depends, they are processing a specific signal. And that signal is, the output of this conversation cannot be determined until variable X is defined. That is a very high-level cognitive function. It signals uncertainty, yes, but specifically it signals that there is no single correct answer yet. It's not emotional, it's almost algebraic. It tells the listener, stop asking me for a yes or no.
But the learner doesn't feel like they're doing algebra. They feel relief. They feel like they've stepped out of the rigid classroom and into the messy real world. And that brings me to the other pillar of my opening argument, the phrase that makes sense.
Which the material calls internal validation.
Precisely. And this is key. Before a learner can even conjugate the verb to make in the present tense, they pick up this phrase. Why? Because it creates an instant bond. It tells the speaker, I'm with you. My mind is clicking with yours. It proves there's a kind of natural response system in the brain that prioritizes that social connection over grammatical perfection. It's the sound of empathy. It's a reward you give the speaker.
I'm not sure I'd say it's purely empathy. I think that makes sense is more of a verification protocol. It just confirms that the incoming information aligns with the listener's pre-existing logical framework. It's a status check. But if we really want to talk about feeling versus function, Let's look at the phrase, I guess so. This is where your argument for connection starts to, well, it starts to fray a little bit.
How so? I guess so is still a connection. It's a form of agreement.
Is it, though? The material highlights this as hesitant agreement. It's a tool for managing a very specific social risk. I guess so signals, I'm not going to stop you, but I am not endorsing you either.
It's soft, though. It's gentle. It allows the conversation to continue without a hard stop, without a conflict.
I think it's a defensive perimeter. It signals, I have insufficient evidence to dispute you, but I also have insufficient conviction to fully agree. A learner picks this up not because it feels warm and fuzzy, it actually feels quite awkward to say, but because it's a necessary survival tool. If your boss suggests a plan you hate but you can't really disprove it, you don't say yes because then you're complicit. You can't say no because, well, you might be fired. So you say, I guess so. It absolves you of liability. That is pure strategy.
You see, I think you're underestimating the emotional intelligence that's required to even use that strategy. You call it liability management. I call it social grace. It's about preserving the relationship despite the doubt. But let's dive deeper into this idea of uncertainty. There's a whole category of these phrases that the material discusses. Phrases like, you never know, or kind of.
Ah, yes. The toolkit of the non-committal.
I prefer the toolkit of the optimist. Let's look at you never know. The source material describes this as feeling philosophical and casual at the same time. I love that description.
It is a bit of a cliche.
It's a bridge. When a learner uses you never know, they connect to a cultural mindset of openness. They aren't just filling silence. They're participating in a shared acceptance that the future is unwritten. It helps them sound natural and relaxed because they're signaling, I'm open to possibility. It's an invitation to hope. Will I get the job? Well, you never know. It kind of lifts the spirit.
I'm not so convinced by the spiritual interpretation. I look at the conversational context. You never know usually acts as a disclaimer. It's a way to engage in advice or small talk without committing to a fact. If I tell you, invest in this stock, it will go up, and it crashes, I'm liable. I've lost status. If I say, invest in this stock, hey, you never know, I've effectively signed a waiver.
You make human conversation sound so Machiavellian. Do you really think people are constantly thinking about liability waivers?
Subconsciously, absolutely. It's pragmatic. We're constantly protecting our social standing. The learner picks this up because they see it used to mitigate risk. It's the same thing with kind of and sort of.
Those are just polite softeners. They make the language sound less jagged, less absolute.
They're quantifiers. They act as error bars on a statement. So the material says these phrases teach subtlety and politeness. You see that as English speakers managing tone gently. I see it as accuracy management.
But why do we need to manage accuracy in just a casual conversation?
To avoid being wrong, a textbook teaches you to say, the car is blue. That is a definitive truth claim. Real life requires you to say, it's kind of blue because the lighting is bad and you don't want to be corrected. Learners aspire to this because the natural sound of a native speaker is actually the sound of imprecision. It's a hedge. It allows you to be right enough without being completely wrong.
I see why you think that, but I believe you're missing the human element of why we reduce certainty. We don't say kinda just to avoid being sued for inaccuracy. We say it to avoid dominating the reality of the listener. It's an act of accommodation. If I say, that movie was bad, I'm stating a fact that you might disagree with, and that creates conflict. If I say, it was kinda bad, I'm leaving room for your opinion. It's a democratic use of language. It's polite because it shares the space.
Or it's a cowardly use of language because you refuse to take a real stance. But let's move to where that social friction is most palpable. The phrase, I'm just saying.
Ah, a classic. A phrase that carries so much weight.
The advocate in you surely sees this as a triumph of social awareness.
I do. The source material notes that it appears when someone wants to soften an opinion or deliver mild criticism. Learners intuitively feel its purpose is to reduce tension. It's a safety valve. You say something honest, maybe a bit sharp, and then you use I'm just saying to signal, hey, I'm not attacking you, I'm just sharing a thought. It protects the relationship. It says don't shoot the messenger.
I have to strongly disagree there. I think I'm just saying is perhaps the most aggressive passive phrase in the English language.
How is it aggressive? It's literally backing down from a fight.
It's a strategic retreat after an ambush. It is used specifically after you've dropped a controversial opinion. You look terrible in that shirt. I'm just saying. It frames the criticism as a mere observation, stripping it of its hostile intent after the fact. It allows the speaker to attack and then immediately retreat to a safe distance where you're not allowed to be mad at them. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card for being rude.
But that retreat is the protection. The learner hears this and realizes, this is how I can be honest without destroying the connection. It proves language is about maintaining the bond even when things get rocky.
It proves language is about plausible deniability.
Let's look at fair enough. The material calls this a beautiful example of balance and respect. Surely you can't find a cynical angle on that one.
Oh, watch me. Fair enough is fascinating.
Because it signals acceptance. It shows the learner understands that you can validate a viewpoint without agreeing with it. It's a sophisticated emotional maneuver to say, I hear you and your point is valid. It's democratic.
It is sophisticated, but I'd argue it's a termination protocol. Fair enough signals acceptance without agreement, yes, but its primary function is to end the debate. It defines the boundaries of the disagreement. It says, your logic is internally consistent, even if your premises are wrong, and I have no further energy to expend on this.
That is such a harsh reading. You're stripping the phrase of all grace.
It's structural. These are high-level debate tactics, what linguists call pragmatics, that learners adopt. They aren't just connecting, they're learning how to declare a draw in a duel. Fair enough is the white flag that lets both sides keep their dignity. That is a functional utility. It saves calories.
But dignity is an emotional value. You cannot separate the function from the feeling. If it didn't feel respectful, it wouldn't work as a termination protocol. The feeling is the mechanism. If I say, fair enough, and I roll my eyes, it doesn't work. I have to mean it or at least perform the emotion of respect.
That is a compelling argument, but consider the filler phrases. The material discusses, I mean. You probably see this as the music of the language.
I do. I mean is about rhythm. It's about flow. The material says it helps speakers clarify, correct, or expand. But for the learner, hearing I mean constantly allows them to sync up with the heartbeat of the native speaker. It differentiates spoken language from the rigid written word. It gives the speaker time to think and the listener time to process. It makes the speech feel alive.
And while you're listening to the rhythm, I'm looking at the error correction. I mean is what's called a repair initiator. That's the linguistic term. It signals to the listener the previous data packet was corrupted or incomplete. Here is the corrected version.
You make us sound like modems. Data packet?
Speech is data transmission. When a learner uses I mean, they are learning how to edit themselves in real time. I was at the store, I mean the bank. It's a delete key for spoken words. But let's talk about the ultimate phrase for this section, the one that I think truly divides us. You know what I mean.
Oh, I love this phrase. It appears constantly in the source material.
The material says this connects speaker and listener, inviting emotional alignment.
It is the ultimate request for shared empathy. It says, I cannot find the perfect words, but I trust you to see my heart. It invites the listener to step into the speaker's shoes. It prioritizes connection over perfection. It's a beautiful vulnerability. It admits, I'm struggling to explain this, so please help me out.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it's purely about vulnerability. You know what I mean is a request for labor. It is the speaker outsourcing the cognitive load of articulation to the listener.
Outsourcing the load. That sounds like a business transaction.
Yes. The speaker has failed to be precise. Instead of trying harder to find the right word, they use you know what I mean to demand that the listener fill in the gaps. It's effective, yes, but it isn't just shared empathy. It is a pragmatic demand that says, do the work for me. It's laziness disguised as camaraderie.
I think that is a very harsh interpretation of a very human moment. We are not dictionaries, we are fallible. And you know what I mean? Acknowledges that fallibility. It builds a team. We're in this meaning-making together. If I have to define every term perfectly, I'm lecturing you. If I say you know what I mean, I am conversing with you.
It's a shortcut.
And shortcuts are useful. Shortcuts are how we get home. Speaking of which, what about at the end of the day? The material calls this a tool for closure and perspective. It feels like a satisfying narrative conclusion. It tells a story.
It's a rhetorical device for hierarchy. It signals summarization. It is a signpost that says, ignore the details we discussed for the last 10 minutes. Here is the only metric that matters. It teaches structure. It creates a hierarchy of information, separating the noise from the signal.
But it feels like wisdom. At the end of the day, suggests that we have journeyed through all the complexity and arrived at a simple truth. It's a storytelling tool. It gives the learner the power to frame the narrative.
Which brings us right back to this central tension, doesn't it? You see a story, I see a schematic.
And I think the story is what allows the brain to learn it. I mean, if these phrases were just repair initiators or logic gates, they would be dry and hard to memorize. But because they carry this emotional weight, this vibes-based meaning, learners just soak them up like sponges. The Fluent Mindcast material makes a powerful point. If a listener understands these phrases, they are progressing, even if they aren't trying.
I agree that the progress is real, but I attribute it to the brain's pattern-matching engine solving for social survival, not just emotional resonance. The prosody, the pitch and the rhythm, carries the pragmatic payload. The reason learners need that payload is functional. They need a tool to signal compliance without conviction, for example. The feeling serves the function.
But that is exactly what comforting recognition is. It is the brain recognizing, this sound pattern creates safety. This sound pattern creates agreement.
And safety and agreement are functional outcomes.
They are emotional states.
I suppose we are reaching a fair enough moment right here.
I think we are. And that brings us perfectly to our closing thoughts.
Indeed. As we consider this intuitive lexicon, I return to my core belief. The Fluent Mindcast approach of trusting the brain to absorb meaning is validated by every single one of these phrases. When a learner understands, you know what I mean, or it depends, they're proving that language is fundamentally about human connection. These phrases are the glue. They are not about grammatical precision, they are about emotional alignment and social awareness. If you, the listener, understand these, you are winning the game of language. Even if you can't explain the rules, you're feeling the language, and that is what matters. And I will concede that the acquisition method is intuitive. You don't study, I'm just saying, in a textbook chapter on defensive posturing. You hear it, you absorb it. However, the content of what you were learning reveals the complex, jagged way English speakers handle ambiguity and social hierarchy. These phrases, kind of, fair enough, I guess so, are the armor and the weaponry of social interaction. They are tools for managing the unknown and the uncomfortable. By mastering them, learners aren't just connecting, they are mastering the high-level pragmatics of how to be a person in the world. They are learning to navigate the logic of uncertainty.
Whether it's the logic of uncertainty or the feeling of possibility, the result is the same, a deeper, more natural fluency.
Precisely. And I think this shows that complexity often requires multiple perspectives to fully appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the intuitive mind.
It has been a pleasure.
That's it for the debate.